Bonjour à...
Good afternoon to all of you. We are going to tackle the topic of our labor relations or relations in the workplace, so between efficiency and humanity. So looking at this topic, some people said, well, you're only going to be talking about working from home. I said, I'm not so sure, because I think it's a broader topic. When I read this title, I'm thinking it all stems from and goes back to technology, because had we not, if we didn't have digital technology, we could not have worked from home. So it is those digital tools that have made it possible for us to work remotely. And this has, of course, been generalized during the health crisis for a lot of employees who've been able to work remotely from their company and employers, and that has been true for many communities and for the whole world during the health crisis. So that raises a number of questions. If we try to discuss our working relationships, trying to strike a balance between efficiency and humanity, I think we cannot be content with thinking that working from home has become the new normal. Working together in the workplace is also about the role of employee representatives and employer representatives, for example, and it's much broader than that. Let me introduce our panelists. Yochai BENKLER is a writer, is a professor at Harvard Law School, and he is the author of The Wealth of Networks. It's a book in which he analyzes the way information technology and communications technology can change working relationships and actually develop them and transform the economy and society. Méka BRUNEL, she's the CEO of Gecina, which is a real estate investment company. So real estate is your realm, and so you take a 180-degree view on housing, real estate, and working environment, and how we should adapt mortar and click to the society's expectations. LABAYE, your new head of Polytechniques, that is really the pool for many employers, and used to be part of McKinsey, with a focus on technology, but also on public sector and the role of state. And you certainly have your vision of the world to come. Bertrand, you're the head of Edenred. Edenred is a company that specializes in payment solutions for a lot of companies. You told me as we were preparing for this meeting that you had to have a great part of your employees work from home. And Nicolas, you are the Director General for bpifrance, which is the public investment bank. And the idea is to give a boost to entrepreneurs, and BPI has been in the front line throughout the crisis. You'll discuss transparency and trust. And last but not least, Alexandra ROULET, she's a lecturer at INSEAD school, and she's published a number of books on work and working relationships. Over to you, Alexandra. Thank you, Bruna. As you said, our topic is very broad. Some of us will have to refocus on working from home, working remotely, which is, of course, one of the latest developments that we've experienced over the last few months, but we'll try and see the big picture as well. So by way of introduction, I just want to make two comments so as to give you an insight on what academic research has to say on working from home. The first comment will be from the employee's viewpoint. What do we know about how they perceive working from home? And the second comment will be more from the viewpoint of employers and the impact of working from home on productivity. So from the employee's viewpoint, I wanted to tell you about that study that was published in 2017 in the American Economic Review by Alex Mass and Andy Pally. They are economists, and they have tried to quantify to what extent employees value the possibility of being able to work from home. So how have they perceived the possibility of being able to benefit from that option? They've had applicants choose between two job offers that were completely identical. The only difference was that one gave the possibility of teleworking and the other did not. Most of the time, the applicants would choose the one that included the possibility of working from home, even if it paid less. And they estimated that the gap in salary that the applicants were prepared to accept was 8%. But what was most important is that they tried to understand why. One of the aspects is to be able to have time flexibility, be able to choose the number of hours of working hours you want to do. That's what they expected, but actually not at all. Most employees, but there's a nuance to that, most employees are okay with, and they want to work the same number of hours as a regular working week, except for a small group, that's women with young children who want flexibility, and they are prepared to accept a lower salary. But for most applicants, that was not the main factor. The main factor was that they didn't want to commute from home to work every day, which for a lot of employees has become a bit tiresome. In particular, in big conurbations, it's not so much to benefit from more flexibility, but to make it possible for these employees to not to have long commuting. The second comment from the employer's viewpoint: what productivity can we expect when people work from home? In the Quarterly Journal of Economics, there's a study that was published in 2015, and so the context was a big travel agency in China that is a listed company, and they wanted to study the effect of teleworking on productivity. So they've had one part of their employees work on the premises and another work from home. So they wanted to thus study productivity without any bias. And they noted an increase in productivity of 15%. But then what's interesting is that they asked afterwards which group employees wanted to be in. And once people were able to choose, the gain in productivity was 22%, almost twice as much. So it is specific to the context, of course. So those productivity gains are not automatic. But generally speaking, it is hard to predict who's going to prove more productive working from home or working on site. And it is hard to predict on the basis of what you can observe. But people themselves know whether they're the type of person to be more productive at home or on site. So the best way to enhance productivity is to actually let employees choose for themselves and decide how much time they want to spend working from home. So what this teaches us is that working from home or working remotely should not be something that's imposed or that should be developed or shouldn't be developed, but it should be an option, a possibility, because a certain number of employees, and it's hard to predict whom, are going to want to benefit from it because they have a family environment or a living environment that makes it easier for them not to have to commute every day. So this is what academic research has to say in a nutshell about working from home. And now I'll give the floor to Professor BENKLER that is going to help us step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Thank you very much, Alexandra. So, Yochai BENKLER, over to you.
I'm very happy to be with you. Let me suggest the following. There is no single answer. There's no single outcome to a particular technology in how it affects productivity or humanity, equality. What there is a constant conflict and battle between employers and workers around the state, around the laws that regulate, around the particular technologies, and the outcome is a particular historical outcome of those battles. Whether we go to the 1840s in battles that came out differently in Glasgow versus Lancashire for how mule spinning in cotton spinning happened, with smaller spinners in Glasgow allowing more employment of women at lower wages, as opposed to the workers in Lancashire being able to build bigger mules and contain production, whether it's iron molding in Chicago in response to efforts to get 8-hour workday that used machines to replace workers, or whether it's all the way to the ways in which optical barcode readers and computers were used to restructure supply chains in order to work around the extremely powerful unions in the US and Europe to externalize a lot of the labor costs with offshoring and to create dualized labor markets between core economy and guest workers in the core of Europe. We've seen in every single wave of industrialization from the beginning of the 19th century conflicts over which components of a technology work together, and we've seen large divergences between regions, between countries, between clusters of countries in how productivity gets implemented, and in particular, the extent to which humanity or equality or economic security are played off with productivity. The bottom line is that there's no direct trade-off between productivity and humanity. What there are is a range of issues. And the difference between Denmark and Alabama or Greece and Germany is not one of a particular technology that's used this way or the other, but rather the ways in which the political conflicts between labor and management, between firms in markets and states and their relative efficacy have gotten together. If we look at the collapse of neoliberalism, the rise of ethno-nationalism both in Europe and in the United States, what we're seeing is large classes of workers who have been left behind with economic insecurity, looking for an answer for how it is that the elites who govern them made their lives more miserable and less secure. And the nationalists are coming in and saying it's because of all of these others, be they the guest workers, be they the black workers, be they the Latino immigrants in different countries. What we need instead is to understand that the idea that there's a single right path, a single right way to implement technology, build life, that's false. What we need instead is a strategy for containing the market, for containing market power, because firms will, many of them will use technology in a way that maximizes profit, even at the expense of some loss of productivity, if it can create greater power in the market, against competitors and suppliers, greater power in labor markets to extract a higher share of profits, greater long-term political power in the economy. What we're seeing now, and here I'll talk for a moment in the US before this momentous election, what we're seeing is that as a counterbalance to ethno-nationalism, we're seeing a revitalization of the idea that the state can engage actively in driving technological change and work organization towards a more egalitarian or a better balance between humanity and productivity as something that's becoming the major policy of the Democratic Party. And we can talk about a whole range of things from reviving antitrust to creating a social safety net that's much more like you know in Europe. But let me focus specifically just for the last minute or so on the central role of public policy in technological developments. If you think Green New Deal or green growth, that's stepping back from the moment of the pandemic to the larger scale challenge of climate and saying the state has to take a leading role in combining a labor policy with a climate policy in order to create new political alliances. If we're talking about specifically for technology, it means that we need to use algorithmic management instead of as a way to supervise and extract value from workers, as a way of assuring corporate accountability, as a way of creating continuous audit trails and monitoring, as a way of measuring and identifying exploitation of workers, of consumers, and reporting to a regulatory framework. It's a way of developing better algorithmic management to allow greater worker autonomy. In the domain of automation, it means leaning in to labor complementing robotics, including through procurement and investment in technological development. So it includes focusing on high and mid-skilled worker support systems, not thinking just of doctors with robots, but thinking of nurses with higher quality AI system. The bottom line I'm trying to push is to ask us to move away or zoom up from the narrow specific of telework and focus on the fact that the same set of technological components can always be organized in ways that increase the power of one side or another of the labor relationship, one side or another of the market. And we need democratically accountable public policy to lean in to making the trade-off between productivity and humanity one that leans into humanity, because we actually don't sacrifice productivity when we do that. Well within the same productivity frontier, we can push for more humane relations in production. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Yochai.
Thank you very much, Yochai.
Méka Brunel.
I now give the floor to Méka Brunel. Good afternoon. I think that what has just been said by Mr. BENKLER is most interesting and is in line with what we think. You know, Gecina is a real estate company. We do, we have rental buildings, flats, and collaborative buildings, house for household rental and also for co-working, but to make sure that people will share more space and more services. For years now, we changed, in the last few years, we changed our strategy based on three observations. And the crisis that we've just experienced from this sanitary crisis is not creating trends, but actually accelerates the implementation of trends. The main three observations are as follows. First, a trend to have urban use centrality usage around public transport. I know public transport are not very popular today, but I know we know very well that people are less tempted to use their individual cars. Now, second, the impact of technology. What's been said goes in the direction. Technology, digitalization. I don't like the word artificial intelligence. I have a problem to say intelligence and artificial, For me, intelligence is still for a while human and should remain human to evolve. But this trend to digitalization will remove thousands of administrative, repetitive, non-creative jobs through the automation of processes and will transform our labor force into two main categories, basically the service professions and the added value professions. This is the second trend, and technology will lead us to ask for more flexibility, more mobility. The third trend, of course, it's the climate crisis, which means that we have to be more central and short circuits and more in sustainable development. And in this societal responsibility, based on these three observations, we've been able during the sanitary crisis do telework. I'm not calling telework as such per se, because I hope telework, I know, has standard codes, norms of modes of organization and management systems that we don't have or we've not been able to deploy in our company. 100% of our employees, except for the janitors in buildings, worked remotely and had the technology to do so. Yet that's not what I like really teleworking, because as it's just been said, it calls for a transformation of the labor code and the mode of operation. Well, we've been able to do remote working or teleworking, but we were able to observe a certain number of issues in terms of productivity. Okay, let's say the first 4 weeks we were highly productive. Then with time, you know, 4, 5, 7 weeks, you know, there was kind of a fatigue, and I don't see why children should not look screens and adults can look at screens all day long. So this this erasure or the erasing of borders and a public life and confidentiality, which were no longer there, you know, with the fact that sometimes, you know, you have to be disconnected, you know, you have to disconnect, you know. I'm very much in favor of the right to be disconnected, because sometimes, you know, you have to do something else to be able to think and to be disconnected from the social links, you know, the apéro Zooms we did, you know, the Zoom drinking sessions, you know. But it's not the same thing as going to a bar with friends or having a barbecue in a garden. You know, it's not the same thing. Let's face it. And sometimes, once in a while, even if you don't agree, it's better when you say so directly rather than through a Zoom or a screen. Okay, I'm having a sort of a humoristic note here, but all this is essential, and this was missing. And we consider that, in fact, we are very, you know, there is a total inequality in that period. As Professor Yochai said, Mr. BENKLER said, we don't have the same life conditions, the same working conditions, the same environments. If you got, you know, young children and adolescents, and you have to do the school, you know, you have to be a school teacher while attending meetings. Well, it's not exactly the same thing that as if you're single in a loft in a, you know, in an affluent district. Of course, well, you know, it's, you know, so they said there are more and more depression, anxiety because of this disconnection. So the true topic, the true issue that's coming up is this human dimension of your relationships, and of course the relationship or the struggle relationships. You know, it's not just to be in opposition, but to be in doing things. You know, in the corporate culture, what makes the difference between one company to the next, and what is the mental health of our organizations. You know, McKinsey always assessing the health of organization. Well, the health of organization is the way we work together. Companies are moral, individuals in a way, you know, but the combination of the two words has a meaning, and it shows that, you know, we have to adapt ourselves. However, what this is showing is that we need to keep thinking endlessly about the organization of ways of working. It's the adaptation of our ways of working, our work method, and consider a combination between, you know, the hierarchies we knew until now and the techno-structures we knew until now, to go towards more flexibility last word to say that the crisis showed us how those who are below the social scales, the janitors, garbage collectors, healthcare provider are important for society. We can't pull out of this thing, nothing happened. Leaders will stay in the countryside in great amazing conditions and will work like living conditions. And those who will have to do it socially, well, this is not acceptable to those who cannot afford pleasant sites. So to work from home causes a problem for employers as well, because we are responsible and, by the way, legally responsible to what happened at home with our colleagues, with our collaborators. And we'll end up with we'll have a real estate stock, with modes of operation, comfort, organization. And you know very well that we cannot allow a person who works alone in an office platform, but should there be cardiac arrest, this is our problem, our responsibility as well. As far as I'm concerned, I think that we should go home together. I mean, we're all tired, and we should come back and we should let the dust settle on all these problems. Thank you. Eric LABAYE, what do you think? So I think we're going through digitalization is in progress, but we have the first observation I'll make is that it changed the mindset of people, a huge, change in the mindset of people. A lot of people saw what was possible, which was not true for everybody. So this is something that has to be, capitalized on. Before you used to say, no, it's possible. Well, now we know it's possible. Now, is it, it's something we want? Okay, it's possible, but do we want that? But this is moving upscale. Moving upscale. A lot of people have experimented something, but it's going to be a catalyst. But it could also, it will fuel a lot of questions the acceleration of transformation. Second observation, globally, there is a level of acceptance quite high from those who went to teleworking. Yet, with huge questions remaining, because we saw that there were individual problems, we saw there were problems of communication, we saw that there was problems of connection, disconnection. So even if there is a positive aspect, there are high expectations and questions will have to be addressed. So it's not a yes-no, clear-cut. Yes, the dynamics is positive, but those individual issues have to be discussed and addressed. And the third aspect that we talk about digital, shrinks distances, but it also shrinks time. We have people from Harvard, Berkeley, and this kind of interaction usually is planned months ahead. We were able to organize COMEX one day before for the next. Usually you have to plan it one week before. So this time dimension has to be taken into account because it provides better connection, better decision-making process, and therefore we have to understand the advantages while, of course, dealing with the questions I mentioned. From the three observations, I would have three key points. First, we need to rework the organization to ensure this efficacy and humanity. Process has to evolve. Management, decentralized management has to be thought about, and while keeping in mind the corporate culture. The company culture is not just top-down, so many days of teleworking, such process, digital, non-digital. No. We have missions to fulfill. We have jobs to do. So to fulfill the missions, what are the new modes of organization that are possible? And everybody should be involved, team by team, define what's the optimum ratio between digital or teleworking and presence, and so on and so forth. So again, we want to be the best experience for the staff, for the students, for example, for Polytechnique. So if we back to fulfilling the missions while asking for the expectations or wishes, and then we will capitalize on the what we've learned in the last 3-4 months, and we'll define what's the best for the next experience in fulfilling missions. Then there's a new demand to management, a new pressure on management. We've seen that in the last few weeks. Clearly, management had to be on the front line. Some didn't know how to manage a team remotely. I mean, sometimes institution, you manage your team on site, teams on site. All of a sudden, they had to do like a remote management, tele management, and that's a trust trust is essential. Do we redefine the ways of working? Do we set clear objectives? And mainly, is there a sort of empowerment of the rest of the team, because we're not there next to one another? We have a new mode of working. So there is a new step in the case of this organization. We have to redefine how management can procure this experience and therefore ensure trust, ensure responsibilization and autonomy of the various members of the team. And then third imperative are the tools. We talked about technology. Well, it's not just connectivity, but tools. We have to learn how to use them. And when we talk about human contact, for me, digital tools are part of human contact. To say human contact is physical, of course, it is fundamental in a relationship between a teacher and a student when they work together at having a coffee at the machine. But okay, it can be enhanced by using collaborative tools. We've seen that, so they were imposed in some cases. But basically, how can we learn how to use collaborative tools to ensure trust, sharing, transparency, connection when it has to be quick, or rapid. And this is a new imperative. We have to do it team by team. Technology progresses rapidly, but we have to take it and use it. So in one word, we are reinventing our work environment, but it has to be done bottom up, that is team by team, organization by organization. We will redefine the processes, the management mode, making sure that we keep the culture and the value of the company, which will be at the heart of this efficacy and humanity. Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Bertrand DUMAZY from Edenred. Efficacy, humanity, well, in this dialectic, the good news that we need the two ends. With no efficacy, no humanity, no efficiency, no humanity. An efficient company makes profit, and this will go to taxes, and this tax will make it possible to have a more human society. It works in the other direction too. Without humanity, no efficiency. Inhuman orders will lead to mediocre results. Remember the brilliant phrase from Saint-Exupéry in Citadel: to build a boat, don't give orders, but invite people to sail away. So in this dynamics between the two ends of the chain, teleworking, what did it mean at Edenred in a practical, anchored way? Edenred employs 10,000 people in 45 countries, from Singapore to Santiago, and pandemics went east-west through all our operations, and the mean age is 35. So teleworking was a great tool for efficiency. Why? Because we were able to serve our customers all over the world. Without teleworking, it would have been impossible. And we were able to serve our customers because our collaborators went 100% teleworking in less than 48 hours. But we were able to do it because, technologically speaking, the tools provided by Edenred are digital tools, and therefore they can be used remotely. So for Edenred, teleworking was a great tool for efficiency, and also efficiency for our customers, because we were able to serve them fairly well with no interruption. So long live teleworking. So teleworking provided some humanity in the numerous experience feedback that we got through the world. Some feedbacks from managers were to say, okay, it's funny, in remote working, when we were all the team in teleworking, there is some kind of a equalizing phenomenon. The N-2 is more at ease to take the floor because some kind of a distance created by digital system, but each and everyone can express himself or herself better. And as we see people in their private world, it breaks some way of behaving or talking. So teleworking at Edenred was experienced as a factor of humanity. Then the question asked by Eric LABAYE is most interesting question. Everything's possible in teleworking. Everything was possible for us. Now, is it something we desire? Well, the questions I asked myself are as follows. In the scaling of the use of teleworking, well, first, a company is first and foremost women and men who get up every day, who merge to a location and say, we want to work together. And to be together is to share emotion and passion. And it is true that digital can do everything except emotion and passion. So there, the question for us is, where is the breaking point? At which level of utilization of teleworking the sharing of emotion and passion is no longer possible? A company is doing well if it is within a sort of a peaceful framework. I mean, you know, inside the company, you know, there is no social tension, no social conflicts. But we realize that teleworking creates huge inequalities. You know, the worker in the Ile-de-France had access to teleworking during the pandemic at 41%. The one in Normandy, 11%. Now, does it mean that there are big, you know, idiots and rednecks in Normandy and who cannot use a computer? So what can we say about those who cannot do teleworking, who come to the site every day? You know, Méka talked about, you know, the janitor or the cleaning lady, or and often, you know, they have to do commuting because they stay, you know, they're even further from their working the location, whereas the executive doesn't have to, or the manager doesn't have to come to the site. So we need this and to live together and to work together. So I don't know today what is the breaking point or the tipping point. Where is the tipping point? So, and there are risks of intergenerational fragmentation. A company is a great machine to integrate generations, merge generations, and that is to take time to do the commuting, to say welcome to a young graduate who just joined the company. And this young graduate, if there are managers fully autonomous in teleworking, and just take a simple parameter of measurement, 1 day of teleworking per week. It's not much, it's quite feasible. Well, it is 20% of opportunities less for a young employee to interact with someone who knows, who has experience, and who will want to convey, pass on the knowledge, experience. We have means to compensate for that, but the problem needs to be asked. So teleworking is a tool for humanity, but it has limitations. And like any tools, we have to ask ourselves, what are the utilization, what are the limits? And I share the views presented early on, that is basically the limitations. Once you're aware of them, we identify them, let's trust ourselves, we'll find a way to use the tools, and let's trust those who will use them. The worst scenario for me would be to institutionalize teleworking, that is, to make the utilization of the tool more rigid, where it can be a tool of emancipation and flexibility. The other worst situation would be teleworking should not be a sort of, should not hide some problems, you know, a fig leaf should not, if in France commuting becomes unbearable for the inhabitants around Paris, it is because the countries is hyper-concentrated. I don't want the use of teleworking stop us thinking about the hyper-concentration of the Paris region and therefore the solving of the problem. Therefore, between humanity, efficiency, Edenred experienced teleworking, everything's possible, but like every tool has limits, and the genius of man in full trust and responsibility will make it possible to master it. Thank you, Bertrand. I will now give the floor to Nicolas DUFOURCQ. We felt that you were very present, very ready during the sanitary crisis. What is your experience, feedback, and your vision for this new form of work?
Well, in the week preceding the announcement by the French president of lockdown, it so happens that because I have several hospital physicians amongst my relatives, I took my responsibility and I told my employees that as of Monday, the 15th of March, everybody would be working from home. That was not necessarily feasible because some employees needed to come back on site in certain IT jobs and payment triggering related tasks. So we looked at how many people needed to go on premises at least a few times a week for logistics reasons. And as we were trying to do the maths, we realized that out of 4,000 staff, 150 to 200 people had to come back on premises. All the rest was done remotely, and it worked really well. It was like a sort of sounding board where everybody seemed to share the same cause, seemed to share in the emergency. Everybody was trying to work towards good performance and velocity. We wanted to make sure that our products would be available as early as possible. Since we that is still vivid in my memory, not only in the first 3 weeks, because, there were government plans announced to support the automotive industry, the tourism industry, and others. But when we got back together, we had to, of course, admit to the fact that it was really good to see one another again. It wasn't so easy to get our staff to come back because some were still worried about the health risks. And besides that, they had regained a form of freedom that the crisis had given them. So we realized that we had to think up something new for the future. On October the 1st, we planned an event, and we hope it can still take place. And this event, called The Big, we've entitled Freedom. When you read the Labour Code, you are reminded that when you accept an employment contract, you accept a form of subordination. But what form of subordination are we still prepared to accept? At bpifrance, I agree with Méka. We shouldn't rush into anything. We should wait till September, because we're all still a bit shaken. You know, it's the same as when you are stepping off a ship. You need a bit of time to get your bearings again. What's certain is that we're not going to say, come September, you will work from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What we will say to people is, we trust you. And you can, if you want, work from home 2 days a week. But we've realized that it was linked to a mobility crisis. That's what Ms. ROULET said. A number of employees have a very long commute to work, and it is our moral duty to do something to help them. We cannot let our staff, I'm thinking of those in the Paris region or in the Marseille conurbation or Toulouse conurbation, have to commute for an hour and 30 minutes every morning and every evening. That commute can be useful because it's a time for thinking, which is useful. We all need times in the day to think. That is essential. Otherwise, we burn ourselves out. But of course, if you work non-stop from 8:30 in the morning till 8 p.m., this is a way to burn out. But it can become absurd. So for this, to avoid that, working from home can be a good thing, but we shouldn't find ourselves in the situation where people, since they know that they can work from home, are going to choose to live even more far away from their working place, which would be bad for a number of reasons, including the carbon footprint. So working relationships will have to be rethought and reinvented. And we could never have done what we've done at bpifrance, which is to come up with fully operational platforms, had our operational teams not been able to work from home without any distraction. And they said that for IT teams, they said that it would probably be a good thing to still have the possibility to work from home 2 days a week. So the more you digitalize, the more you actually need physical interaction. And we are moving towards more digital in our lives, which means that we will need more physical interaction. When you drive your car in the morning to go to work, there has to be a good reason to go to work. What I mean by that is that interpersonal relationships in the workplace have to be worth the employee's while. So we have to rebuild those bits of humanity in the workplace. So there has to be a festive element, some conviviality, some rituals, with those short briefing times where you can share, and that sort of rituals will have to be developed. And all the more so if people were to live more far away from their workplace. What makes me wonder is the question of intensity. We have to come to terms with the fact that we've lost in intensity. We've gone through a phase of hyper-intensity because we were in the midst of a crisis. Méka said that we all felt tired, and I think she's right. It's a bit like a hangover, but it shouldn't be permanent. And my intuition is that working from home, when it becomes a bit of a routine, you're running the risk of losing in intensity and in the kind of pace of your, it's like the pace of a beating heart. So which echoes what I was saying about these rituals, you know, when you are physically present in the workplace. So to regain that intensity, we'll have to reinvent those rituals. I was struck, you know, during the last 3 months, every Thursday, I organized a live forum with my employees to tell them, brief them on what the executive committee did, and it's every Thursday because it's a Q&A. It's very interactive. And that really changed the life of their employees. And we didn't used to do that. We did it once a month to share a strategic plan, for example. Now we do it once a week. So every speech, all the information that is very important for employees, it doesn't always trickle down. It doesn't always percolate down to all the employees. Those who are in contact with customers don't always have the possibility to get the big picture on their company. So that kind of rituals I will keep to make up for the absence of that sharing of strategic planning. Well, this is a bit jumbled up, but well, yeah, and you're going a bit slightly over time. Oh, well, shall I stop here? Well, that, unless you have a last idea to share with us. We have quite a lot of questions. So we are on reset mode, and it's going deep. Before I share with you the questions of web users. You are all managers, all here around the table, so we have a certain amount of power. Could you tell us how you envisage that period from the point of view of a manager? What did working remotely, how did it impact your managerial modus operandi? Well, some old habits came back because when I said that my company Edenred went 100% working from home, I actually went to work every day because I thought the captain should be last to leave the ship. So, I thought it was important that I still go to our head office in Issy-les-Moulineaux in the Paris region. So it was important to show that the captain was still at the helm, even in the midst of a storm that all of our operations had to weather. Second thing, and picking up on what Nicolas Dufour said, the need for people to hear all the messages that would be shared with them was even higher. So a number of our councils and committees and meetings were more regular than they used to be. And another thing, during such a storm and with limited physical contact, we've had to try and keep a connection with people. That includes links between managers and their team. From the moment you have one person working under you, that makes you a manager, and you can't let that person working under you down. So you need to have an update with them in the morning and one in the evening. And working from home will be perceived and experienced very differently from one staff member to another. Some loved it and some hated it. And among some that hated it, there are young people because they were in a very small flat and their working conditions were not good. Among those that didn't really like it, there were also mothers who had to combine work and housework and looking after children. So what we've realized is that there had to be more information coming from managers and shared with employees, and realizing how important it is to assume the full responsibility of having someone working under you. I wasn't at work every day, but sometimes during that period, and every time I spoke to all our staff members, as Nicolas Dufour said, there was a need to share information. So we've had an XCOM every day. And we went on. We kept that up even after lockdown, and also management committee meetings that we had more regularly, and we also worked on our raison d'être more so maybe than we had done before. And I can tell you that every day when I woke up and I switched my smartphone on, I hoped I wouldn't be told that one of my staff members was badly ill. And I woke up with that fear every day. And every evening I thought, well, that's one day that is over and that has gone okay. And I had also that feeling of being close to people, so that I had to free myself to a certain extent from my managerial position to be closer. And all my emails started with, I hope this finds you well and that your family is okay. Rather than, can you get back to me on this? So I think we should actually go back to asking one another if we're okay. And you know, I think I have the feeling that maybe we missed out on and we left some people behind. So we communicated by emails and we had short clips and videos. So that begs the question of how the strategic decisions we make percolate down to all the employees and how we should train middle management so that they can also contribute to that and not only give instructions. So it questioned quite a lot of our modus operandi and our business model.
In a very similar way, I think the first point is frequency, the frequency of interaction. COMEX every day, every second day, operational committee monthly, every week. So over communication, if it's through all 3 days, WebEx, we don't do WebEx every week, but we're just about to do so. So we did WebEx, the first WebEx. Usually we were like, we would do amphitheaters, where now we do WebEx, and there were hundreds of people in French and English. So over communication, that to make sure that everybody would have the information and would listen to the questions, that all questions asked are dealt with. Now, third element, the attention to individuals or to persons, as just been said, every day, every second day, make sure that on the student side, we knew what was going on the staff side, or the teachers and researchers, based on management principles, where is everybody, how are they, the healthcare aspect, but also the connection, to ensure that we don't have anybody left alone on the side. And last element is specific attention to the operational dimension in a very transparent way. Many students, the people would go in an internship the following week, and a third of promotion would go to international internships. So that was difficult. So we followed very closely what was going on operationally in the internships, in the laboratories, and so on and so forth, in order to, because in crisis management, you must be able to know and react in these points. Nicolas Dufour. Now, did you feel, well, something, but did you feel that you gained in power because of that situation? Does it make it more, does it make you more responsible? You're talking about the company, or you're talking about the individual? As a manager? What I felt is that the company first, revealed its DNA, and the company is looking for its fate. We were asked to do something quite exceptional. Yeah, there was an increase of intensity and quite considerable within the company. Increase in temperature, but regulated the increase in temperature, but a high increase in temperature. So, and which has been made possible once more within the context of 100% teleworking, because in the 6 years we had quite a human relationship capital, and so when you have to deal with crisis, and then you have a sort of a very good human relationship capital, and then we did consume it. Now we have to restock it, if I could say so. But I would ask and give the floor to Yochai BENKLER, whom I can't see. Yochai, can you hear us? Yes? Okay. So on those issues, and then on those issues. So on those issues of power management and companies, with your vision of the topic, now how will technology influence the entire system?
So I'm trying to struggle in the conversation between the things that I'm raising and the very real and human concerns that the managers and people speaking are concerned with. I would be curious to hear from the managers what sort of auditing, surveillance. So when everything happens online, everything is susceptible to capture and analysis with data. And that can help people. You can use it to help people. You can use it to extract from people. There seems to me to be a disconnect between the very specific and technical managerial conversation that's going on about remote work and what happens in the face-to-face, as compared to this basic political upheaval that you in France are going through, we, of course, here in the US are, that has to do with a sense of identity and economic insecurity, whether it's, you've almost forgotten your gilet jaune, but I guess you haven't.
No, we haven't.
You're talking about power very differently. So just as a technological matter, I guess I'd be interested in finding out whether you're doing measurement any differently, whether there's any effort to collect from either by the firms or by the government about how people are working, how people are being rewarded, how people are able to express their own governance preferences. Because what I'm hearing is very much of a focus on the mechanical management of the firm, and this obviously may be the basis of what people are experiencing in the day-to-day. And it's harder for me to understand how this restructuring interacts with the broader destabilization that we're seeing in democratic market societies, with the ways in which Europe is or is not going to disintegrate around the reassertion of national borders and national boundaries, in a sense of where the disease is or isn't coming from. Are we all in this together, or are we separate? And that's, in some sense, I don't know to what extent this conversation is at all top of mind for people around the table. And I'd be very curious to hear how people think of what their own experience, how it relates to these basic questions of structure of power in society, of a sense of exclusion or inclusion in society in general. There's a half reference to the differences between the impact in the Ile-de-France and Normandy. Is that something that's very real for you, so that you're seeing regional differentiation? Are you concerned about political instability coming from the differentiation in how it works for some firms and some kinds of workers, but not for others? Those are questions that I'd be curious to hear what people's experiences are.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je vais repasser la parole à...
Okay, yeah, I'll establish a link, yes. What I wanted to say concerning your question about the power of managers or corporate managers, but also back to it links up with Mr. Benkler's comments. A business manager is not a giant that is spinning a huge wheel that is gearing with other wheels with a foreseeable result. And in emergency situation, the manager is even bigger and the wheel is even larger, and it's even, no, it's not that actually. For a company like Edenred in 45 countries, the mission of the manager is to create the purest chemistry by working the temperature and pressure. Now, if we have a biological vision of company and not mechanistic vision of company, we have to ask ourselves questions posed by Professor BENKLER, Edenred in Brazil, dealing with the pandemics and teleworking. What are the good conditions for, like we did basically, that we said, okay, we would like, first, we are aware of the fact that the social structure is not the same from one country to another. So because of differences for the same families, we'll put 25 million aside, and this money will make it possible to heal or cure everybody in the same country. So if you belong to the Edenred family, regardless of the social systems of your country, in front of this event, we'll try to equalize conditions between the various entities. Now, biologically, do we see differences from one region to another or one country to another? The answer is yes. And if our profession is to create best conditions for having the best chemistry among our workers, yes, we have to solve that problem. Well, I mean, we experienced teleworking accelerated because of an emergency situation. Now, if teleworking becomes common, or and it spreads. Is there fear in terms of your power, in your management authority? I mean, do we enter another configuration? I don't have any fear. Let's face it. Fear is never good. You know, labor relationship will be redefined, and they can only be redefined by bottom-up and responsibility and trust. Yeah, I share this view. I think fear is a very ill advisor, and it blocks you. Questions raised are that questions we ask ourselves as well. When I said that all range of our professions will disappear because of new technologies, well, this is something that will need transformation in the way our societies will evolve. And we were in real estate, very modestly, but we rent to people who are in the economy, and we have to help them in this period. We supported all our customers rapidly. As of March, we had a committee that would accompany all our customers one by one to see our businesses one by one. Transformation are ahead of us. We cannot work differently. Could we really assess, measure the real impact of the benefit of technology today through this period? I doubt it, because I don't know what we would measure, or what would be the indicator, because it was an exceptional situation. Now, should we either have measurement, societal measurement parameters? What is the impact in the organization of society, including business, the company culture, the culture of the country? When we talk about nationalism, means that people want to belong to something. We have that in our companies, be it local or international. We go through this wish to belong to an entity, to a group, so we have to foster that, fuel that, and we have no other means but to rethink the way we work and to implement measurement tools or instruments or parameters as efficient as possible, and therefore such tools should take into account not only the hours we spend to solve a problem in 6 or 30 minutes, but what is the social link it created. Otherwise, we've gone through the yellow vest crisis, but not just in France, all over the world. See what's going on in the US. Well, we are at the beginning of very crucial topics, distortion in societies, and we cannot ignore it. We are a player among others. Power. I don't know what it is in such a case. Eric Laval, and then we have to close. Maybe one reflection, additional reflection. When we deal with organizations, we talk about empowerment or responsibilization. When there is, when we empower mid-level staff, or managers, well, these mid-managers, became responsible and more autonomous. They were not always ready, but one of the major points today is that when we define the way we work, we have to add training of the managers, mid-managers, employee, and the tools. And one of the first things we did, we sent 4Gs just to be connected, to have access to tools. And so these elements of training and accessibility tools is an imperative. It is a sine qua non conditions for success of all evolution of organization of this type. I have a first question, quite philosophical, I need to say. The problem of a company, don't you think it is simply the huge managerial hypocrisy and its lack of humanity? Is this clear enough? Don't know, not certain. Nicolas Dufourcq, possibly? It's more it's not a question, it's like a statement. It's a viewpoint, it's a statement. It's a statement. We don't share it. Questions to which we've already provided partial reply. Harvey asked, why should teleworking be the norm from some activities? Well, for which activity could teleworking become the norm? Nicolas talked about IT people. They work much better at home. Are there other functions? Well, I think, again, difference between remote working and teleworking. It's not the same thing. You know, we have entities who are at 5 kilometers, 12,000 kilometers from us, and they work with us. That's usual, but they're within the company, you know. So at one stage, when teleworking for everywhere, so where's the DNA of the company? The company is a culture, its values, its exchange, its interaction. It's difficult to develop such values if you're never with the others. So I don't believe in the 100% teleworking, but in a 100% remote working companies, such as you know, I come from the world of consulting. Before we did remote working. There are rights, you know, meetings every 3 months. You know, the mix. The problem is to find a balance, the mix between presence and distance, or remote, but not teleworking in the sense that I'm home 5 days a week. That's not the point. Then you lose track of a lot of things. We have to close unless you respond rapidly to this question we asked. Will teleworking create two types of workings, those who can do it and those who can't do it? Well, of course. Yeah, okay, well, unfortunately, I think we're just about to be cut off. That's basically done. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your contributions. And thank you to all the listeners.